The essentials for successful organizational change. What are the key things that you have to get right if you are going to be successful in organizational change? That is the focus here. But first, where are we in the flow of understanding organizational change? We're at the very beginning, understanding why organizations change. Building upon this foundation, we can look at the types of change that organizations can go through, study how people change, the stages that they go through while changing, determining what to change, the analysis and diagnosis. We can study the project management of leading an organizational change. There's many tools that can be used. There's also a detailed study of becoming a change agent, as well as tracking progress toward change. But at this point, we're laying the foundation, understanding why organizations change. In this particular video and those that follow, I will focus on the application of learning. This is because my belief is that people learn best by applying what they're learning. It's in the application that you discover what you know and, more importantly, what you don't know. Therefore, we will be going forward with a series of applications throughout this and other videos. There will be two types of applications, and I encourage you to use both types. The first is organizational specific. What in your organization you believe needs changing. This will be an application of the learning within that particular situation. You may not be able to control the change, but you may be able to influence it. Control may not be possible. Influence will likely be possible. So this will be the first type of application. The second application of the learning will be, what would you like to change about yourself? Since all organizational change involves individuals changing, there's some benefit in being able to understand how you can change yourself, thereby learning how you can assist others in changing also. Moving forward then, what are the key 3 essentials for organizational change? These are the things that you have to get right. The basis for these comes from many years of experience, both professionally leading and being involved in change initiatives. It also comes from over a decade of studying organizational change at the doctoral level and talking with many people around the world about what makes change successful, and more importantly, what are the barriers to success. This eventually came to be encapsulated here as the 3 essentials that you must get right. The first is knowing what to change. This may seem somewhat obvious, but too often people rush into change initiatives without really taking the time to understand what are the things that they're changing, the core problems that are being addressed, not just the symptoms, and more importantly, what not to change. Too often, good things get swept along with the change, and you lose core competencies, you lose values, or the change initiative may conflict with some of the things that the people in an organization hold dearly. So therefore, the key here is knowing not only what needs to be changed, the core issue, not the symptoms, but also what not to change. This also then leads into the second, the ability or the necessity to differentiate between change leadership and change management. Very often, organizational change is captured within the change management focus. That is kind of the default, but in my studies, I became aware that there's a significant difference between management and leadership. You may favor one over the other, but they're not necessarily better One is not necessarily better than the other. They are both needed. They play different roles. You lead some things, but you have to manage other things. We therefore have to, within organizational change, be able to differentiate what needs to be led and what needs to be managed. Part of this is rather superficial, and that is, can you mandate the change? If you can actually mandate it and force compliance, then you can manage the process, but that is rarely the case. Oftentimes, you can only influence people to take action. Otherwise, you may get appearance of compliance, but you don't get the full commitment. It's a passive-aggressive type of response. In that situation, the people may temporarily change, but once the pressure or the management focus is off, they will revert back to past practices. Therefore, the key then is being able to differentiate between change leadership, what you can influence, versus what you can actually manage. But there's another component here. Not only the ability to lead the vision, but the management of the change process. We're going to talk in many of the future videos about the process that organizations go through, the different steps that can be taken that will facilitate a collective action toward change. There are a number of standard processes for that can be managed, but the management of the process is very different from the leadership of the vision. In this way, you have both the vision leadership and the process management co-working together for a collective change initiative. The third essential then follows how to involve the people. When you take a look at the failure rate for organizational change, it is quite high and oftentimes involves overlooking people component. In talking with a number of people recently, I'm coming to call this change enablement, in that there's certain things that you have to lead, there's certain things that you can manage, but there's also things that you can do to enable people themselves to participate in the change process. What you then have is a combination of change leadership, change management, and change enablement all working together for a successful change process. And not to be forgotten, knowing what to change and what not to change. The question then comes is what happens if you were to overlook any one of these essential components? First is you can have ineffective change objectives. This is where you are changing something that should not change, or you have not properly involved the people such that the objective of where you're trying to lead the change is lacking full support, or maybe lacking full information of knowledge that the people in an organization may have. This can lead to possibly being successful but ending up in the wrong place. It also involves knowing what to communicate and to whom. This is looking at the leadership, the management, but more importantly, the enablement. Who needs to be involved? Where are they in the stages of change? What communication is necessary to move them forward toward change? Lacking the essentials, this will not be accomplished, and you're likely to have a failure situation. Collectively, then, you could have waste of time across the organization and the efforts themselves be ineffective in that you're not really accomplishing what you want or in a timely manner. But most importantly, if you overlook any of these essentials for organizational change, you're likely to increase resistance. People generally don't resist change, they resist being changed. This involves the leadership of change, the involvement or the enablement of change, in which case, if you do not apply these essentials properly, you can create resistance where otherwise resistance would not exist. Therefore, it is key then to focus on the essentials. The remaining videos will get into much more detail the essentials for successful organizational change. We're now building the foundation of knowledge to move forward for success.